My best friend's life is completely unraveling right now, and I'm the only one who knows the catalyst. It was a mistake I made in high school, a drunken lie I told that set this entire tragic chain of events in motion. I keep watching her suffer, wondering if I deserve to feel this crippling guilt for the rest of my life. I'm still processing what happened last Saturday night, and honestly I need to get this out because I'm fuming and confused and my head is spinning from all the drama that followed. Like seriously, what the actual just happened to my life? So I've been dating Connor for about 8 months now and things have been pretty good overall. He's 26 and we met through mutual friends at a barbecue last summer. Normal relationship stuff, you know. We hang out a few times a week. He's met my parents. I've met his family. We do couple things like mini golf and Netflix marathons and farmers markets on weekends. But here's where things get weird. Connor has this obsession with social media that I honestly didn't think was that big of a deal until last weekend. He posts constantly on Instagram, like multiple stories per day, always tagging locations and people, documenting every meal and workout and random thought. I'm more of a lurker type who posts maybe once a week, usually just sunset photos or my coffee or whatever. Different social media styles, no big deal, right? Wrong. Apparently, the first hint something was off came about 3 weeks ago when Connor started making these little comments about my Instagram. Like we'd be out to dinner and he'd pose for a selfie and when I didn't immediately post it, he'd ask why I was waiting. Or he'd notice that I posted a picture of my breakfast but didn't include the fact that we had breakfast together. Small stuff that seemed harmless, but looking back now I should have paid more attention to the pattern. Then 2 weeks ago I went through this crazy busy period at work where I was pulling late nights and barely had time to check social media, let alone post anything. Connor mentioned a few times that I hadn't posted any pictures of us lately, and I brushed it off because honestly, who keeps track of that stuff? I figured he was just being silly and I'd post something when I had a chance. Fast forward to last Saturday. Connor's friend Timothy was having this house party for his birthday. Just about 30 people hanging out in his backyard with drinks and music. I was actually looking forward to it because I'd been so stressed with work and needed to blow off some steam. Connor and I showed up around 8, grabbed some beers and started mingling with everyone. Everything was totally normal for the first couple hours. I was catching up with some people I hadn't seen in a while. Connor was doing his usual thing of taking pictures of everything and posting them to his story. I remember thinking it was actually really nice to see him in his element with his friend group, being social and funny and relaxed. But then around 10:30 something shifted. Connor came up to me while I was talking to Timothy's girlfriend, Hazel, about her new job, and he had this weird energy about him. He seemed agitated and kept checking his phone, scrolling through Instagram and Facebook with this frustrated expression. I asked if everything was okay and he said he was fine, but he clearly wasn't. About 20 minutes later, Connor grabbed my arm and pulled me aside near the back fence where it was quieter. He started asking me why I never post pictures of us together anymore, and when was the last time I put him on my Instagram story. I was confused because, like I said, I'd been swamped with work and barely posting anything at all. I explained that I'd just been busy and distracted, but that seemed to make him more upset, not less. Then Connor said something that should have been a massive red flag. He told me that real girlfriends are proud to show off their boyfriends and that he was starting to wonder if I was embarrassed of him or keeping my options open. I was honestly shocked because that came out of nowhere and made no sense given how much time we spend together and how integrated our lives have become. I tried to explain that my social media habits have nothing to do with how I feel about him and that plenty of people are private online, but he wasn't hearing it. He kept saying that all his friends' girlfriends post about them regularly and that I was being weird and secretive. The conversation was going in circles and I could tell other people were starting to notice we were having some kind of argument. That's when things went completely off the rails. In a way I still can't believe actually happened. Connor apparently decided that the best way to prove his point was to make it everyone else's problem too. He literally walked back into the main party area and announced to the entire group that they needed to settle a debate for us. I followed him because I was mortified and trying to figure out how to shut this down before it got worse. But Connor was already holding up his phone and telling everyone to look at my Instagram profile to see how I never post about my boyfriend. He was scrolling through my recent post and pointing out that I'd posted pictures of my coffee, my dog, some sunset, a book I was reading, but no pictures of him. The humiliation I felt standing there while 30 people stared at my phone screen and listened to Connor analyze my social media presence like it was evidence in a court case. People were uncomfortable and trying to change the subject, but Connor kept going, getting more worked up and more dramatic about how this proved I was ashamed of him. Then he said the thing that made me realize this relationship was probably over. Connor looked right at me in front of all these people and said I was acting like a fake girlfriend who was probably embarrassed of him and that real girlfriends don't hide their relationships like dirty secrets. The way he said it was so nasty and accusatory in public that I felt like I'd been slapped. I told him he was being ridiculous and that we needed to talk about this privately, but he was too far gone. Connor threw his hands up and announced that he was leaving because he wasn't going to waste his time with someone who treated him like he didn't exist. Then he stormed out of the party while everyone stood there in complete awkward silence. I stayed for another hour trying to salvage the situation and apologized to Timothy for the drama. But honestly, everyone was looking at me like I was the problem. A few people asked if Connor was okay and whether we fight about social media a lot, which just made me feel worse because now I'm second-guessing whether I actually was being inconsiderate somehow. By the time I got home around midnight, I had 17 text messages from Connor, ranging from angry rants about how I humiliated him in front of his friends to accusations that I'm probably talking to other guys and that's why I don't want to post a couple photos. The messages got progressively more unhinged and demanding, with Connor insisting that I needed to post a picture of us immediately to prove I'm not ashamed of him. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, exhausted and confused and honestly just wanting the fighting to stop, I posted a picture from earlier that evening of Connor and me at the party. Within 5 minutes he commented on it saying, "About time you stopped hiding me like I'm some dirty secret." Which made me want to delete the whole post because now it looked like he'd force me to put it up. I thought that would be the end of it, and we could talk things through the next day when we were both calmer. But apparently Connor's family had been watching this whole social media drama unfold because Sunday morning, I woke up to a text from his mom, Nancy. And that's where this story takes a turn that I'm still trying to process because what happened next made the party incident look like nothing. First update. Holy for you guys. The comments on my last post were incredible and so many of you called exactly what was going to happen next. Shout out to the person who said, family members getting involved meant this was about to get 10 times worse. You were absolutely right. So Sunday morning I woke up to this long text from Connor's mom Nancy that basically tore me apart. She started off saying she'd been watching Connor's Instagram story from the party and noticed how upset he seemed. Then she'd seen my post afterward in Connor's comment and she wanted to understand what was going on between us. But then Nancy went completely off the rails. She told me she'd raised Connor to value relationships where both people are proud to be together and that she was concerned I wasn't taking our relationship seriously. She said that when she was dating Connor's dad, she couldn't wait to show him off to everyone and that real women who love their men want the whole world to know about it. The part that really got me was when Nancy said she'd noticed I barely mentioned Connor on social media and that she's worried I'm treating him like some casual fling instead of recognizing what a catch he is. She ended the message by saying she hopes I can figure out how to appreciate her son properly because good men like Connor don't wait around forever for women who act ashamed of them. I was honestly stunned that his mother was getting involved in our relationship drama and lecturing me about social media posts like I'm some teenager who doesn't know how to behave. I screenshot the message and sent it to my best friend Violet, who immediately called me and was like, "What the hell is wrong with these people?" Before I could even figure out how to respond to Nancy, Connor started blowing up my phone with calls and texts saying we needed to talk immediately. I was still in my pajamas, drinking coffee and trying to process his mom's message. But Connor was insisting I come over to his apartment right away to discuss everything that happened at the party. I told Connor I needed some time to think about things, but he kept pushing, saying we couldn't leave issues unresolved and that he'd been up all night thinking about our fight. He seemed genuinely distressed and kept apologizing for losing his temper in public. So I agreed to drive over around noon to talk things through. When I got to Connor's place, he immediately launched into this long explanation about how social media is really important to him because it's how he stays connected with friends and family who live far away. He said his college buddies always share pictures of their girlfriends and that when I don't post about us, it makes him feel invisible in my life. Connor explained that he'd been feeling insecure for weeks watching me post about everything except our relationship and that he started wondering if I was keeping my options open or planning to break up with him. He said the party incident happened because he'd been drinking and all those feelings came out at once in the worst possible way. I tried to explain that my posting habits have nothing to do with how much I care about him and that plenty of people prefer to keep their relationships more private online. I told Connor that constantly documenting everything on social media actually makes me feel less present in the moment and that I'd rather focus on actually enjoying our time together than staging it for Instagram. But Connor kept circling back to the same points about how couples should want to celebrate each other publicly and how my behavior was sending mixed signals to everyone around us. He said his friends have been asking if we're having problems because I never acknowledge him online and that it's embarrassing to constantly have to explain why his girlfriend acts like he doesn't exist. The conversation went on for almost 2 hours with both of us repeating the same arguments over and over. Connor insisting that social media sharing is a normal part of modern relationships and me trying to explain that forced posting feels fake and uncomfortable. Neither of us was budging and I could tell we were both getting frustrated again. That's when Connor brought up his mom's text and said Nancy was just concerned about our relationship because she could see how much the situation was bothering him. He defended her message by saying she was trying to be helpful and that she raised valid points about how committed couples typically behave. I told Connor that having his mother lecture me about Instagram was completely inappropriate and that our relationship shouldn't involve his family members monitoring my social media activity. Connor got defensive and said Nancy was just looking out for him and that I was overreacting to someone who cares about both of us. The conversation was going nowhere, and I was starting to feel like Connor fundamentally didn't understand why the party incident was so humiliating and inappropriate. I told him I needed more time to think about whether we could work through such different perspectives on privacy and relationships. Connor panicked when I said that and started backtracking, saying he didn't want to break up over something stupid and that we could find a compromise. He suggested I could start posting about us occasionally without it being forced or fake, and that he would try to be less sensitive about social media in general. I was considering whether that could actually work when Connor's phone started buzzing with notifications. He glanced at it and got this weird expression, then said his sister Erica wanted to see the Instagram post I'd made Saturday night. Before I could ask why that mattered, Connor was showing me his phone screen where Erica had shared my post to her Instagram story, but she hadn't just shared it normally. Erica had added text over the picture that said, "Some girls don't deserve good men," with a bunch of eye-rolling emojis. She tagged several of her friends and added another story slide about how she couldn't believe some people needed to be forced to show appreciation for their relationships. Erica has like 3,000 followers and she was basically calling me out as a bad girlfriend to all of them based on one Instagram post and whatever version of events Connor had told her. Connor tried to downplay it by saying Erica was just being protective and that she didn't mean anything serious by it, but I was done. I told him that having his sister publicly shame me online was the final straw and that I couldn't deal with his entire family getting involved in our relationship drama. Connor begged me not to make any big decisions while I was emotional and promised he would talk to Erica about taking down the story. He said his family just needed time to understand my perspective and that once they got to know me better, they'd realize they'd jump to conclusions. But here's the thing that's been eating at me since Sunday. When Connor showed me Erica's story, I noticed she'd already gotten dozens of responses from people agreeing with her and adding their own comments about girlfriends who don't appreciate good guys. My picture was being screenshot and shared with commentary I couldn't even see, spreading to people I'll never know about. I left Connor's apartment without giving him a definitive answer about our relationship, but honestly I'm leaning toward ending things. The fact that he doesn't see how inappropriate his family's behavior is makes me think this is just going to keep escalating if I stay with him. But here's where I need advice from you guys because something happened yesterday that's making me question everything about this situation and Connor's motivations. Update 2 posted 5 days later. Okay, so first off, thank you to everyone who commented on my last update. You guys are absolutely right that Connor's family behavior is completely unhinged and that I should have run the minute his mom started lecturing me about being a real woman. The person who said this screams controlling behavior was Spot. So, after I left Connor's apartment on Sunday feeling completely drained from that 2-hour conversation where we just talked in circles, I decided I needed to get some perspective on this whole situation. I called my older sister Jasmine, who lives across the country, and told her everything that had happened from the party incident to NY's text to Erica's Instagram story. Jasmine listened to the whole story and then asked me one question that hit me like a truck. She wanted to know if Connor had ever shown this level of intensity about anything else in our relationship or if the social media obsession was completely out of character. When I really thought about it, I realized Connor had always been pretty focused on appearances and how things looked to other people. But I'd written it off as him just being social and outgoing. Like Connor always wanted to go to the trendy restaurants where he could tag the location. He cared a lot about what his friends thought of me. And he'd made comments before about how couples should present themselves publicly. I'd never connected those dots before because individually each thing seemed harmless. But taken together, it painted a picture of someone who was really concerned with external validation. Monday morning, Connor started texting me again, asking if I'd had time to think about everything we discussed and whether I was ready to move forward with some kind of compromise. I decided to be completely honest and told him that the more I thought about our conversation, the more I realized how different our values were around privacy and relationships. Connor immediately went into damage control mode and said that he understood I needed space to process, but that he didn't want me to overthink things and create problems that didn't exist. He insisted that every couple has disagreements about social media and that we could work through this if I was willing to meet him halfway. I explained to Connor that it wasn't just about social media anymore. It was about the way he'd handled the whole situation, from the public humiliation at the party to defending his family's inappropriate behavior. I told him that healthy relationships don't involve partners monitoring each other's online activity or families publicly shaming people for not posting enough couple photos. Connor got defensive and said I was making the situation bigger than it needed to be and that his family was just protective because they care about him. He said if I would just make a small effort to post about us occasionally, all of this drama would disappear and we could go back to being happy together. But that response just confirmed that Connor still didn't understand why any of this was problematic. He was treating his family's behavior like a minor annoyance that I should tolerate rather than a massive red flag about boundaries and respect. When I pointed this out, Connor said I was being dramatic and that all families get involved in relationships sometimes. The conversation went on for over an hour with Connor trying to convince me that I was overreacting and that we could solve everything if I would just be more understanding about what mattered to him. He kept saying that posting about your relationship is normal and that my resistance to doing it was what caused all the problems in the first place. I finally told Connor that I needed more time to think about whether we were compatible long-term and that I wasn't ready to make any promises about changing my social media habits. Connor said he respected that, but asked if I could at least not make any final decisions while I was still upset about his family's reaction. Tuesday morning, I woke up planning to spend the day at work focusing on other things and getting some distance from all the relationship drama. But around 10 a.m. I got a text from my coworker Nola, asking if everything was okay because someone had been asking questions about me at the coffee shop near our office. Apparently, Nola had been grabbing her usual morning latte when the barista mentioned that a woman had been in earlier, asking about me specifically, wanting to know if I came in regularly, what I usually ordered, whether I seemed happy, stuff like that. The barista thought it was weird enough to mention it to Nola since she knows we work together. My first thought was that maybe Connor Unk's mom Nancy had decided to do some investigating of her own. But when Nola described the woman as young with dark hair and a lot of Instagram-worthy jewelry, I realized it had to be Erica. The idea that Connor Unk's sister was tracking down places I go regularly and questioning people about me was absolutely terrifying. I immediately texted Connor asking if he knew why Erica would be asking questions about me at businesses near my office. Connor called me right away and seemed genuinely confused and concerned when I explained what Nola had told me. He said he had no idea why Erica would do something like that and that he would call her immediately to find out what was going on. About an hour later, Connor texted me saying he talked to Erica and that there had been a misunderstanding. According to him, Erica had been in that area for work and decided to stop by the coffee shop she'd seen in my Instagram stories to see what the big deal was about their drinks. Connor said she'd mentioned to the barista that she knew someone who came there regularly, and the conversation had gotten blown out of proportion, but that explanation made no sense because I'd never posted any Instagram stories about that coffee shop. I barely post stories at all, and when I do, it's usually just sunset photos or my dog. When I pointed this out to Connor, he said Erica must have been thinking of a different place and that the whole thing was just a coincidence. I told Connor that his sister showing up at businesses near my workplace and asking about me felt like stalking behavior and that I was seriously uncomfortable with his family's level of involvement in our relationship. Connor said I was jumping to conclusions and that Erica probably just wanted to understand why I liked certain places so she could relate to me better. The fact that Connor was defending and making excuses for clearly inappropriate behavior instead of being horrified that his sister was investigating my daily routine made me realize that this family operates with completely different boundaries than I'm comfortable with. When I told Connor that, he said I was being paranoid and that his family was just trying to understand me better. Wednesday, things escalated even further when I got a friend request on Facebook from Connor Unk's mom Nancy. I don't use Facebook much and hadn't even realized Connor Unk's family could find me on there, but Nancy had somehow tracked down my profile and was requesting to connect with me. I screenshot the request and sent it to Connor asking why his mom was trying to add me on social media when we'd never even met in person. Connor said Nancy was probably just trying to be friendly and get to know me better since our relationship was getting more serious. But when I looked at NY's Facebook profile, I could see that she'd been posting about Connor Unk's relationship status and sharing articles about social media and relationships and how to tell if your partner is committed to you. She'd also posted some vague status updates about young women today, not understanding how to appreciate good men. I realized that Connor Unk's entire family was treating our relationship like it was their business to monitor and comment on. And Connor was encouraging this behavior by sharing details about our private conflicts with them. When I confronted him about this, Connor said his family was just concerned about his happiness and that I should be grateful they cared enough to want to get to know me. Thursday morning, I made the decision that this relationship had to end because Connor clearly wasn't going to establish appropriate boundaries with his family and didn't see their behavior as problematic. I texted Connor asking if we could meet that evening to talk about where things stood between us. Connor immediately called me and started trying to convince me not to break up with him over what he called family drama that would settle down once everyone got used to each other. He said he loved me and that we could work through these issues if I would just give his family a chance to apologize and start over. But I'd already made up my mind that this pattern of behavior was only going to get worse if Connor couldn't see how inappropriate it was. I told Connor that I wanted to meet in person to discuss ending our relationship because I didn't feel comfortable continuing to date someone whose family felt entitled to monitor and judge my social media activity. Connor begged me to reconsider and said he would talk to his family about backing off and giving us space to work things out. He promised that Nancy and Erica would apologize for making me uncomfortable and that we could establish better boundaries going forward. But here's what I'm realizing. Even if Connor Unk's family apologized and promised to stay out of our business, the fact that Connor didn't immediately shut down their inappropriate behavior when it started means he doesn't actually understand why it was wrong. And that tells me everything I need to know about what a future with him would look like. So we're meeting tonight and I'm planning to end things officially, but honestly I'm nervous about how Connor and his family are going to react to being told no. Final update posted 2 weeks later. I can't believe how much this situation escalated after my last post. Thank you to everyone who told me to trust my instincts and get the hell out. You were absolutely right and I'm so glad I listened to the comments instead of Connor Unk's manipulation. So Thursday night, I met Connor at a neutral coffee shop downtown to have the breakup conversation. I chose somewhere public because honestly, after his family's stalking behavior, I wasn't comfortable being alone with him at either of our apartments. Connor seemed optimistic when I first arrived and kept saying he was glad I was willing to work things out. I immediately told Connor that I wasn't there to work things out. I was there to end our relationship because his family's behavior had shown me that we have fundamentally incompatible values about boundaries and respect. Connor's face completely changed and he started arguing that I was making a huge mistake over a few misunderstandings that could easily be resolved. Connor launched into this long speech about how much he loved me and how perfect we were together aside from this one issue. He said his family's involvement was just because they cared about him and that once they got to know me better, all the tension would disappear. He kept insisting that breaking up over social media drama was ridiculous and that I was throwing away something great over nothing. I explained to Connor that it wasn't about social media anymore. It was about his complete inability to see why his behavior at the party was humiliating. Why his mom lecturing me was inappropriate. Why his sister stalking my workplace was terrifying. And why defending all of that instead of being horrified by it was a deal breaker for me. Connor got increasingly desperate and started trying different tactics to change my mind. First, he apologized for not handling his family better and promised he would set strict boundaries with them going forward. When I said it was too late for that, he switched to bargaining and said we could take a break instead of breaking up completely so I could have space to cool down. When I refused that option, Connor started getting angry and said I was being unreasonable and dramatic about normal family involvement and relationships. He said most people would be flattered that his family cared enough to want to get to know me and that I was creating problems where none existed. The conversation went on for almost 3 hours with Connor cycling through apologies, promises, bargaining, anger, and back to desperate pleading. He kept saying that his family would back off if I just gave them a chance to make things right and that I was punishing him for other people's mistakes. But the thing that really confirmed I was making the right decision was when Connor said that if I would just post about our relationship regularly like a normal girlfriend, none of this drama would have happened in the first place. Even in the middle of me breaking up with him, he was still trying to make it my fault for not meeting his social media expectations. I told Connor that blaming me for his family's inappropriate behavior was exactly why this relationship couldn't work, and that I was done discussing it. Connor panicked and started promising that he would cut contact with his family if that's what it took to keep me. But I could tell he didn't mean it and was just saying whatever he thought might work. When Connor realized I wasn't changing my mind, he got really angry and said I was going to regret throwing away a good relationship over stupid pride. He said I'd probably end up alone because most guys wouldn't put up with someone who refuses to compromise about basic relationship expectations. I left the coffee shop feeling relieved that I'd finally ended things, but also worried about how Connor and his family would react to being told no. That worry turned out to be completely justified because what happened over the next few days was absolutely unhinged. Friday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Connor and a series of increasingly frantic text messages. He started off apologizing for getting angry the night before and begging me to reconsider. But when I didn't respond right away, the messages got more aggressive and accusatory. Connor said I was making the biggest mistake of my life and that I'd never find another guy who loved me as much as he did. He accused me of leading him on for 8 months just to break up with him over his family caring about him. He said I was selfish and immature and that I'd realize what I lost when it was too late. I didn't respond to any of the messages because I felt like engaging would just encourage more contact, but Connor kept sending them throughout the day. By Friday evening, he was sending long paragraphs about how we were meant to be together and how he knew I didn't really want to break up. Saturday morning, things got worse when I discovered that Nancy had posted a long Facebook status about young women today, not understanding commitment and how social media has ruined relationships. She didn't mention me by name, but she tagged Connor in it, and several of his relatives had commented with agreement and heart emojis. Then Erica posted an Instagram story with a bunch of screenshots of articles about women who don't appreciate good men and how modern dating culture has made people disposable. She'd added text saying that some people throw away love over the stupidest things and that real women fight for their relationships. Seeing Connor's family publicly discussing our breakup and painting me as some terrible person who didn't appreciate him was infuriating. These people had never even met me in person, but they were creating this whole narrative about who I was based entirely on Connor's version of events. Saturday afternoon, Connor showed up at my apartment building and buzzed my intercom asking to talk. When I said no through the speaker, he started pleading and saying he just needed 5 minutes to explain something important. I told him that showing up at my building uninvited was exactly the kind of boundary-crossing behavior that made me end our relationship. Connor said he wasn't trying to cross boundaries. He just needed to tell me that he'd talked to his family and they all wanted to apologize for making me uncomfortable. He said Nancy and Erica felt terrible about their posts and that everyone was willing to start over if I would give them another chance. I told Connor through the intercom that his family's apologies were meaningless since they were only happening because I'd broken up with him, not because anyone genuinely understood why their behavior was wrong. I said that if he didn't leave immediately, I would call building security. Connor finally left, but not before saying that he wasn't giving up on us, and that he knew I'd come to my senses once I had time to think clearly. The entitlement in his voice was absolutely chilling and made me realize that Connor genuinely believed he could wear me down and force me to come back. Sunday, I decided to block Connor on all social media platforms and his phone number because his constant messaging was becoming harassment. Within an hour of blocking him, I got a friend request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize that had no posts and no profile picture. When I looked at the account details, it had been created that same day, and the username was just a random string of letters and numbers. I'm pretty sure it was Connor trying to create a way to monitor my social media activity after being blocked, which is honestly terrifying behavior. Monday morning, my coworker, Nola, mentioned that the same woman who'd been asking about me at the coffee shop had been back over the weekend asking more questions. The barista told Nola that the woman had wanted to know what times I usually came in and whether I seemed upset or happy lately. I realized that Erica was continuing to stalk my daily routine even after Connor and I had broken up, which confirmed that this family's obsession with monitoring and controlling me wasn't going to stop just because the relationship was over. I decided to document everything and filed a police report about the stalking behavior. The police officer I spoke with said that while the coffee shop incidents probably weren't enough for a restraining order yet, I should keep records of all contact attempts and harassment in case the behavior escalated. She also suggested changing my daily routines temporarily to avoid predictable patterns. Tuesday, I got a call at work from someone claiming to be Connor Unk's aunt, who said she'd gotten my number from Nancy and wanted to talk about the situation between Connor and me. I hung up immediately because the idea that Connor Unk's extended family was now getting involved was absolutely insane. When I told my friend Violet about the aunt calling my workplace, she pointed out that Connor Unk's family had probably been discussing me and our relationship in their group chats and family meetings like I was some kind of problem they all needed to solve collectively. The level of family inchment was unlike anything I'd ever encountered. Wednesday, Connor sent me an email at my work address begging me to read one last message before blocking him completely. In the email, he said he'd been thinking about everything I'd said and that he finally understood why his family's behavior was inappropriate. He promised that he'd told them all to stop contacting me and that he wanted to try again with better boundaries. But the fact that Connor was now contacting me at work after I'd blocked his personal communications just proved that he still didn't understand what boundaries meant. I forwarded the email to HR as documentation and didn't respond to Connor directly. Thursday, I found out from Timothy's girlfriend, Hazel, that Connor had been telling people at their friend group gatherings that I'd broken up with him because I was ashamed of our relationship and didn't want to commit. She said Connor was painting himself as the victim of a girlfriend who led him on and then disappeared when things got serious. Hearing that Connor was still pushing the narrative that I was the problem even after everything that happened made me realize that he genuinely believes his version of events where he's just a loving boyfriend whose family cares too much and I'm an ungrateful girlfriend who threw away something good over nothing. It's been 2 weeks now since the breakup and Connor Unk's family has finally stopped their social media posting about relationships and commitment. Probably because they realized it was making them look unhinged to their own friends and relatives. Connor hasn't tried to contact me since the work email, and I'm hoping he's finally accepting that it's over. Looking back on this whole situation, I'm honestly amazed that I stayed as long as I did once the red flags started appearing. The party incident should have been an immediate deal breaker, but I kept trying to give Connor the benefit of the doubt and find ways to compromise with someone whose fundamental values were incompatible with mine. To anyone reading this who sees their own relationship reflected in Connor Unk's behavior, trust your instincts about boundary violations and family enmeshment. When someone shows you that they think their needs are more important than your comfort and privacy, believe them the first time and run. Connor's still single according to his very public Instagram presence, and honestly, I feel sorry for whatever woman has to deal with his family's monitoring and judgment next. At least now I know exactly what questions to ask about social media expectations and family boundaries in future relationships. Thanks again to everyone who supported me through this absolute show. You guys helped me stay strong when I was doubting myself.